Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving deep into the mind of one of history's absolute greatest inventors, Nikola Tesla. We're going to unpack the mind-blowing science and really the tragic paradox of a visionary genius. This is the guy who gave the world alternating current, but actually spent his final days trying to build a weapon so utterly terrifying he honestly believed it would end all wars forever.
Welcome to our channel, where we explore the darkest corners of the cosmos, the mysteries, the threats, the unknown. This is space like you've never seen it before.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The year is 1943, New York City. Nikola Tesla has just passed away in a pretty modest hotel room, room 3327. And almost immediately, this sparks a massive government raid and a huge cover-up. You kind of have to ask yourself, why the rush? What on earth could possibly be inside that room?
All right, let's get into Section 1, the Peace Ray Paradox.
8 million. That is a staggering, heartbreaking number. It represents the estimated civilian deaths during World War I alone. It was a horrific reality that completely changed how humanity looked at warfare. Now, Tesla was deeply scarred by this violence, and that trauma was compounded by the early tragic death of his own brother. At his core, he was a creator who absolutely despised destruction. So what does this quote actually mean? Well, Tesla's philosophy here essentially invented the modern concept of mutually assured deterrence. The logic is actually pretty straightforward. If every single country has a doomsday weapon, a weapon of absolute mass destruction, well, nobody is ever going to dare to attack first, right? The sheer fear of complete annihilation would ensure peace. So his infamous death ray was, in his own mind anyway, the ultimate peace ray. And here is where the tragic irony really sets in. Tesla literally gave up millions in AC royalties because he genuinely believed science and electricity should be accessible to everyone for the betterment of all humanity. But instead, he had to watch his peaceful innovations, things like radio signals and airplanes, get twisted and weaponized by militaries to coordinate attacks and drop bombs. Seeing humanity turn his gifts into nightmares is exactly what pushed him to dedicate his final years to forcing peace upon the world.
Moving on to Section 2, the Physics of Teleforce.
Now, we need to get one thing straight right away. Teleforce was not a laser. It wasn't a microwave. It wasn't some sci-fi beam of light. It was a proposed defensive weapon designed to accelerate heavy, physical, charged particles, specifically tungsten, through a vacuum tube at near light speed. We are talking about a physical stream of matter hitting a target with absolutely catastrophic kinetic force. Let's put that kind of energy into perspective, right? If you take just one single proton traveling near the speed of light, kind of like what they do in the Large Hadron Collider today, it carries roughly 1.04 times 10 to the negative 8th joules. That's basically the kinetic energy of a buzzing mosquito. Super tiny. But Tesla wasn't talking about shooting just one particle. He wanted to fire a concentrated beam of 3 times 10 to the 14 heavy particles. That literally takes the raw energy of a high-speed locomotive moving at 150 kilometers per hour and concentrates all of that devastating impact into a pinpoint the size of a pen tip. So how would he actually pull this off? Well, step 1, you isolate heavy charged particles, like tungsten. Step 2, you accelerate them inside perfectly sealed vacuum tubes so there is absolutely zero air resistance or atmospheric interference. And step 3, you fire them at near light speed. And here is a really crucial detail about Tesla. His mind worked flawlessly in the abstract. He could run this entire multi-step process in his head, tweaking all the variables until the math was perfect, way before he ever needed to build a physical prototype. And you know what? The physics actually back up how terrifying this concept is. When you're dealing with extreme, near-light speeds, you can't just calculate kinetic energy using the standard old-school half-mass times velocity squared. You have to bring in Einsteinian physics, specifically the Lorentz factor. As these particles get closer to the speed of light, their energy levels don't just tick up a little bit, they scale astronomically. We're talking about energy capable of instantly vaporizing anything in its path.
Which brings us to Section 3, define the magnetic field.
Now, if you're thinking like a skeptic, you might be wondering, wait a minute, Earth has a strong magnetic field, right? And we know magnetic fields force moving, charged particles into a curved path. So wouldn't a beam of tungsten just bend harmlessly off its target and shoot up into the sky?
Well, as it turns out, the math completely proves Tesla right. The deflection radius of a particle in a magnetic field is calculated with this specific formula. Radius equals mass times velocity divided by charge times the magnetic field.
The secret sauce here is the velocity. Because the velocity is so incredibly fast, near the speed of light, that resulting radius scales up massively to 10 to the 8th meters. So what does that actually mean in the real world? It means that over a practical combat distance, say 100 to 200 kilometers, the beam's path is so vast that it effectively appears flawlessly straight. You wouldn't need to calculate bullet drop or worry about projectile arcs like you do with traditional artillery. You literally just point and shoot with extreme pinpoint precision.
All right, Section 4, lasers versus particle beams. If we look at modern lasers currently in development today, like the iron beam, they essentially act like high-powered microwave ovens. They hit an incoming drone, slowly heat up its sensors, blind the cameras, and basically fry the electronics until the whole thing fails. But Tesla's Teleforce? A completely different beast. It relies on the immense physical impact of charged particles to cause instantaneous vaporization of the target. We're talking pure, physical obliteration in a fraction of a second.
And that leads us to Section 5, the Room 3327 mystery.
So, back to the timeline. Tesla dies in poverty in room 3327. Within mere hours, the U.S. government swoops in and seizes 80 trunks of his life's research. They immediately bring in MIT physicist John G. Trump to evaluate these seized papers. But here's the kicker. Decades later, a massive chunk of these findings still remains highly classified. Now keep in mind, by this point in time, a really vicious smear campaign by his corporate rivals had successfully painted Tesla to the public as just some delusional madman.
And honestly, the official assessment by John G. Trump was pretty damning. He officially stated that these papers were just the bad poetry of a madman with no practical military application. But let's look at the context here. Remember, Tesla ran his experiments almost entirely in his own head. He rarely built physical prototypes for his really extreme theories, so he only left behind highly complex theoretical notes. If the authorities were looking for a shiny, finished death ray machine sitting in the corner of his room, they were out of luck. They only had his math to go by, which made it incredibly easy for them to just dismiss his final life's work as total delusion.
Which leaves us with this final really provocative thought. If Tesla's research was truly just the bad poetry of a madman with zero practical application, why is so much of it still strictly classified by the government today? What exactly did they find inside those trunks? Something to think about, right? Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.
If this video made you think, hit like, share it, and subscribe to this channel. Because the next mystery is even deeper. Until then, stay curious and keep looking up.